to show the relevant events of the quarter. Our CFO will speak later and introduce the financial, operational, commercial performance, and finally we'll open the Q&A session for today. Coming into the relevant facts, we are proud that TGI is accomplishing the leverage of the results with an increase of 3 point% in Ebitda in the first Q of 2021, despite the drop of income. If you remember in the last call in Q4, we had anticipated the reduction of contracts in Ballena Barranca, a gas pipeline. As we had specified in that meeting, the challenge for 2021 for the business was going to be a great challenge due to the due date of the contracts in December that represented approximately an impact of $118 million in the year. For this quarter particularly, it is translated into an impact of $34 million of impact in income. Likewise, that situation since last year when this administration starts a TGI business in the last Q, basically defining a strategy that, if you remember, it is the one that we are showing you in this slide, focused on 4 pillars: efficiency, transforming the business, expanding the business, a handling of a proactive regulation, and a work on creating capabilities and managing a change for a different business moment as we are overgoing. Next slide. For us, it is important to show you the business results of these 4 pillars that start to yield and allow us to deliver the results we are bringing to you. Basically, when we see from the point of view of everything related to the business, our EBITDA margin for 2021, it is reaching 80.4% compared to 77.1% that we delivered the same year. Those 3 percentage points of improvement, we have accomplished it through a combination of factors. First, capture of value that is important according to new incomes that are not easy to get due to the way in this business we structure income and hiring, but commercial teams have been able to achieve extraordinary results and have brought new income of $7.4 million thanks to new contracts and active commercial management of managing services like parking, storage, and a daily sale of very important in the business. And on the other hand, a strong culture of cost control and expenditure, despite the fact that we know we are starting a new year and all the inflationary effects and negotiation effects of different rubrics, different rates are not less. So you can see a total decrease of OPEX of $5 million. Definitely, it is not simple to compensate totally the problem of Ballena Barranca, the issue, because we follow up all the quarterly calls to show you what we have accomplished since our strategic pillars. But I would like to acknowledge the great effort of TGI team, the orientation challenge we have had from the board of directors, where we have added new members that holistically are providing with visibility on how to move forward in an agile manner. In efficiency pillar, let me tell you that you can see the efforts of savings of OPEX were 5.2. This way, we want to protect everything regarding the generation of cash flow and controlling expenditure and cost with the generation of contract. The expansion pillar, these 2, efficiency and expansion, were the great drivers of the quarter. The expansion pillar, the management commercial management has been active. The commercial team that is more dynamic than the business had been widening the billing with additional ancillaries and new business models that have been created, as I told you, with the parking and storage, and taking advantage of the installed base. We completed the due diligence that it's important to know that the project of a regasification of the Pacific in February 21st, we finished a milestone for TGI that is relevant, the project of Cusena 4 with the operation of Porvenir Miraflores that started working in March this year, and the pillar of transformation, the pillar that we have progressed, transforming the business, generating a new culture, but also approaching to new initiatives. I'd like to say that we have some incentive strategies to demand in core generation and substitution, and we provided with an entry to a more robust structure to accompany the business transformation process, where we are with a new vice presidency of transformation that is accompanying us in the redesign of processes and accepting in a quicker manner the capability of digitalization that is very important for the business. Likewise, innovation in the pillar of repopulation. There is a fourth pillar, regulation, the initial estimate as a result of the CRE 004 indicates that the WACC for the transportation of gas is double digit. I want to share with you that our way to improve lives, the commitment with which we work, also for us, has been relevant in this quarter. And I'd like to highlight three important actions for the business of TGI. As long as we transform the business, we also want to transform lives and approach to them to a completely different culture. We are satisfied to inform that TGI took second place in the ranking of audits carried out by the district observers, the highest index registered historically from the beginning of the measurement in 2008, the best score. And we started also the rural gasification project that benefits 738 families, as you know. We continue with the commitment and the purpose to improve lives with sustainable and competitive energy. We know the relevance of gas in the energy transition that should face the country, the importance of the development of the comprehensive agenda that we manage with the rest of the members of the chain beyond the sector. So I can tell you that the development of the market from a regulatory framework that is more proactive, like development of products that address to industry like Technique and this parking service and many other products that we are freeing into the market is part of our working for more results. And to tell you that we are committed to perform with a purpose, generating collective prosperity that the country, the society, and the business requires. I'd like to move on with Adriana Muneva, CFO of TGI Business. So she goes on with the presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you, Monica. Good morning, everyone. I will proceed to share in detail the financial, commercial, operational performance of TGI in the first quarter of 2021. As we can see in the chart on the left, I believe there is echo. We can hear you very well. Thank you very much. So moving on with the chart on the left, as Monica mentioned, the relevant facts were finished with the end of the milestone Fusiana phase stage 4. We completed 4,300 meters with a total of 849 cubic meters, ratifying our commitment with the gas sector in the country and guaranteeing the transportation of gas from the plains, Western Plains, to the center of the country. Moving on with the hard capability, we had 760 cubic meters from the first quarter 2020 to 564 million cubic feet day, the first quarter 2021. And as Monica mentioned, we had anticipated in 2021 during the conference of results of the previous quarter, December last year, our transportation contracts associated to Ballena Barranca Road were due, and they had been in effect since 2020. With the use of the gas pipeline, the regulation established mainly the modality of firm hiring. Nevertheless, in the last years, due to the natural declining of the fields of La Guajira, where we transport the associated gas to the gas pipeline from, we used the contracts on behalf of the customers that was less than the hired capacity. For this reason, the current hiring is showing the less capabilities aligned to the reality. When we see the transported volumes, we see in the chart that these reached 480 million cubic feet a day in the first quarter of 2021, showing normalization of gas demand since the transported volumes in the first quarter 2020 still didn't show the impact generated by the pandemic and the lockdown and isolation. With this operational reality, then we move on with to the chart on the right that shows the results, the income of the first quarter of $97 million, showing less firm contract compared to the quarter last year. So it was a drop of 20% in billing compared to the first income of the first quarter last year. This is in line with the estimation of the guidance that we saw in the previous call, and the contract due date represented less income for $34 million, which, as Monica mentioned, were partially compensated thanks to the commercial management and a new hiring and contracts in Ballena Barranca by $10 million, as we will see in the next slide. Let us move on. We started with the income by position. Here we see in firm income by capability of OIM are 93% of income of the first quarter 2020 to 85% in 2021, with a decrease of $30 million mainly due to the contract due dates. The variable charges increased 13% for the first quarter 2020 and first quarter 2021, with an increase of $6 million, and the rest is a minimum participation in both periods. In the bars on the right, we can see what I have mentioned, the income by capability and AO and M. The contract expiration goes to a low for $34 million, and thanks to the commercial work of the company, the decrease is compensated with new hiring with $7.4 million, and the effect of the changes in the charges is compensated between the fixed charges and variable. The tariffs on variable volumes are more than fixed. That is why we want to improve the profile in the reactivation of consumption. If we go back to the chart below on the left, as net effect of the change of the contract of the company, an indexation of IPP in the United States in dollars passed from 70% to 74%, with which the indexed income in pesos, mainly AO and M, is 30% from 30% to 26%. So let's move on. Here, on the right, we have the analysis of the composition by sectors. We need to clarify that from this quarter on, we are reporting these numbers based on the information that is included in the commercial contracts. This specifies the final use of gas. Nevertheless, it doesn't take changes in the nomination. That is why we see the increase year after year in the participation of the residential sector of 52.9% to 73%, since one of our customers now have refined customers with their own capabilities. Likewise, the thermal sector refinery reduces the participation on the effect of the contract to terms. We move on with the next slide. And now we focus on our financial results of the quarter. On the left, we see the Ebitda of the first quarter 2021 that closed in $78 million, representing margin EBITDA of 80.4% versus margin EBITDA of 77.1% of previous year. As Monica mentioned, this means an improvement of 3 points in our EBITDA margin, despite the important drop in the income that we mentioned. This leverage in the EBITDA margin is accomplished through the capture of new income, as I told you, $7.4 million, compensation in the changes of charges payer and savings in the OPEX of the company for $5.2 million. And in OPEX, it is an important accomplishment, taking into account that our base of cost and expenditures is subject to the inflation increase. So to compensate the increase and being able to achieve savings was an important effort, and is aligned to the goals we set and that we shared with you before. These results is to show of active management we have performed from all the pillars of the strategy, as Monica mentioned in the beginning, where in the short term we are looking to protect the margin and generation of cash flow. In the midterm, to increase the sustained growth of the income. The chart on the right, in the net utility, we see the net profit in 2020 was $60 million. The net profit added a favorable effect due to the difference of exchange for $24 million, which was given due to an important devaluation in the end of March last year that coincided with the beginning of the pandemic, and the net profit without the extraordinary $36 million, and to that we decreased the impact of income of $24 million, and we add the savings in OPEX, the benefit by taxes. We have a net profit of $24 million. In this chart, we see the management of the company, the work of the company from the different pillars, and we are able to mitigate importantly the negative effect of income as it was for the plan in 2021. Let us move on with the next slide, and here the leveraging indicators are still in the indicated levels, in line with this year's goals. We share with you, and qualifiers, our reference indicators still provide with space to absorb the impact on income for this year. The most important thing, our due profile allows for a maneuver margin to consolidate our transformational strategy. Let us move on with the next slide. we open our Q&A session where apart from Monica and myself, we're going to have the Vice President of TGI available to answer to your questions. Ariana, thank you for the presentation. We have some questions in the chat. There's the first question I think you can help us is from Andrés Darte Corte Colombiana. He says, good morning. What financing scheme you hope to use in case you win the tendering of regasification of Pacific? Andres, thank you for your question. As you know, we have a partner in this project that is Senagas. Since there was a participation in the project, there was a definition to have an SPV to use a project finance figure. At the moment, we are in all the analysis process, as Monica mentioned, in the relevant facts through the quarter. We completed the regulation analysis, legal analysis, risk analysis, and banking analysis. We have some concerns. We have talked to the government. We are in the process at the moment precisely. Thank you, Adriana. There's another question from Andrés Duarte, Corte Colombiana, Juan Pablo, and now with a commercial matter. I think you can help us too. Which would be the fixed variable payer objective for the contract structure? Good morning, everyone. Currently, the mix of fixed variable of TGI is close to 85, 9, 10 approximately, with a forecast of income. We, for now, don't have any interest. We don't have any strategy to make the income variable. So we would have a fixed component and less variable component. Thank you, Juan Pablo. There is another regarding WACC. Adriana, you can help us from Andrés Duarte, Corte Colombiana. The possible WACC of double digit is after taxes? Yes. Juan Pablo and Luis Alfredo, you can help me with the latest analysis. We are in the process of completing the analysis, but there is an estimate of double digit after taxes. Luis Alfredo, if you would like to explain on the analysis of the WACC. Good morning. The Commission issued a resolution this year, and currently they issued a new resolution 038 of this year, where they state a change of some codes in the references from an international SIG, from SIG to GIGS. So we are hoping for this resolution in 15 days for a definite resolution. This value is of 2 digits. We hope for the new changes before, as a regulating entity is establishing. And according to the regulation, we can calculate the WACC in pesos. Thank you, Luis Alfredo. We have a question from Augusto Uribe. Juan Pablo, now I think you can help us. Augusto asks, what is the profile of due term for gas transport contract for 2022-2023? Thank you, Valeria. Thank you for the question. We don't have any correction in the future, in the short term, of due terms of TGI. We would go to 2024-2025 with a structured contract we have. So we foresee stability and the correction of Ballena Barranca. I think they throw the challenges we have as a company. It happened in previous years. Perfect, Juan Pablo. We have a last question so far from Andres Duarte. Maybe Monica, you can help us. Andres Duarte says the TGI grid or network, can it be used to transport hydrogen instead of natural gas? Maybe somebody from projects or infrastructure. Thank you, Valeria. It's one of the great bets that we have. Basically, to be able to be prepared for everything, meaning supporting hydrogen project. We need to understand that the hydrogen agenda is strategic, where all chains, all links of the chain are working from the molecule to the transport, where for sure we are going to assess for the first entry the meaning of transporting a mix of hydrogen to after that move into hydrogen. And I think with that I answer to the question. Yes, perfect, Monica. Thank you very much. We don't have any more question in the chat, Valeria. We have a question in English. We have shared a question with you, so please check it out to provide with the answer. So we have a question from Peter Bowley from Bank of America. Last quarter, the total, objective total in the OPEX savings for 2021 was going to be $18 million. Is this still the expected amount of savings for OPEX in 2021? Let me answer that question. We announced $18 million in the closing of Q4. That is our base objective. We continue to work on that. Nevertheless, as I mentioned in the closing, we are working to go for more, and from that side, we are looking for initiatives to have a goal for the result, and that is the commitment in the journey, transformation journey within TGI and our administration. Thank you very much, Monica. We don't have any more questions. For now, we don't have any more questions in the English chat. So with that, we finish our TGI section and we can start with the presentation of LIDDA. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to appreciate being with us in the call, in the results of LIDDA. Beforehand, we hope your family are healthy and sound in the post-pandemic period we continue to live. Before we start with today's agenda, I'd like to recap on some relevant events that we have lived in Peru. In 2021 started with a second wave of disease that included a compulsory lockdown. Despite there being restrictive measure, it was more open than the one implemented in 2020. So it allowed our operation activity and the works in the field to continue. So in the future, we hope that as long as the vaccination process advances and the measures of the government become flexible, the economy dynamizes, establishing conditions for the increase of the demand of natural gas in the sector, especially the vehicle sector. Likewise, it is important to mention that currently we have volatility and uncertainty environment generated by the presidential elections in Peru. Nevertheless, as we will see in the next slide, Calida, we keep firm and optimistic, continuing with the execution of the investment plan. With that, reaching more users within our areas. This said, please let us check our main results of the first quarter 2021. Despite the restrictive measures to stop the second wave of disease of COVID in Calida, continues to show commercial results, operational and financials that are solid. In commercial and operational terms, the volume closed the first quarter 2021 with 738 million cubic meters feet a day compared to 725 in the first quarter, with a growth of 1.8%. Likewise, 52,900 new connections were carried out, 56 above the first quarter 2020. 369 kilometers of grid were built at 2.8% in 2020. Compared to the financial results, the first quarter 2021 closed with Ebitda of $43 million, 5.7% above we reached the first quarter last year. Likewise, as a relevant fact, since the last call, Calida received the ratification of triple B qualification and Fitch ratings, result that confirms our solid financial position. Additionally, inform the starting of operation of the project of cogeneration in Real Mall, Real Plaza Purchuco, the biggest ones in Peru, that counts on a built area of more than 240,000 square meters. The project, with cogeneration of energy from natural gas, not only will allow to meet the demand of energy in the mall and reduce CO2 emission, but also it places a base for the development of resolution joint work for natural gas. Before we close the session, we would like to share with you some of the initiatives and acknowledgement contribution that are relevant that we have had as an organization in our environment and community. To start, we are proud to have been acknowledged by the Ministry of Environment as the first company of the hydrocarbon sector in the Peru to measure and verify the carbon footprint in the digital platform Huella de Carbono Peru, the social aspect and cultural aspect in the operations. We have the final recovery of 100 archaeological discovery, and we provided with more than 25,000 people the information of press and social media. Additionally, we added the ELSA platform, a comprehensive diagnosis intervention tool that helps company prevent sexual harassment in the workplace. Is an initiative led by the Inter-American Bank of Development, and likewise for the first quarter 2021. We are appointed as alternate members of the directory Maria Fernanda Suarez, Karen Copete, raising the percentage of female representation to 21%. This decision responds to the intention to reduce the gender gap and the organization as a whole. Finally, Calida had for the second consecutive time the Zero Corruption certification granted by Empresarios por la Integridad. The acknowledgement shows the high ethic standards promoted by the organization in a daily basis. Having covered the main facts and results of the first quarter 2021, let's move on with a revision of the commercial performance, financial and operational. Starting with the commercial performance, as we mentioned in the beginning of the call, first quarter 2021, the build volume reached 738 cubic feet a day, 1.8% above what was built in 2020, 0.7 below the fourth quarter 2020. The growth compared to first quarter 2020 is mainly explained by the recovery of the industrial demand. Regarding the decrease compared to the fourth quarter 2020 is explained by the impact of the partial lockdown in February that affected mainly the demand of natural gas and vehicle gas. The aspect of the participation by segment, it was stable with the exception of the second quarter 2020 due to the contraction of the regulated sector as a whole, a result of the established lockdown last year. Additionally, it is important to mention that around 73% of the total volume that was built belongs to Corpay contract with a life cycle of 12 years in line with the end of the concession of the tendering. Next slide, we can see a comparison between the gas tariff, gas natural, and the closed substitution in dollars by VTU. The tariffs include, apart from the distribution, the charges on gas provision and transport services with a pass-through for LIDDA. As you can see, the natural gas tariff is highly competitive in all the closing segments. It allows the demand and our income to be sustainable through the time. In the closing of the first quarter 2021, the average competitiveness in the residential sector and vehicle natural gas is in the 40% range for the industrial sector and electric generation in the range of 80%. Moving on with our performance, operational performance, this chart we can see the fast recovery of new connections as well as the widening of the distribution system after the impact of the social compulsory isolation in 2020. On the left, we can see we were able to have 52,968 new connections in the first quarter 2021, 57% above the first quarter 2020, and 34% above the previous quarter. And the accumulated level, we count with 1.1 million customers. Additionally, the distribution network expanded 369 kilometers, 3% more than the first quarter 2020, and 22% above the previous quarter. The distribution system reached a total of 12,513 kilometers. Now, let us move on with the financial performance of the company. Regarding the adjusted income, the total income of the pass-through concept, they grew the first quarter 2020 4.3%, fostered by the recovery of industrial demand and the growth of residential demand. Regarding the fourth quarter 2020, the income fell 1.4% due to the fall of the vehicle demand as a result of the temporary isolation in February. On the other hand, the Ebitda closed at $43 million, showing a growth of 5.7% and 3.4% compared to the first and fourth quarter 2020. This growth is explained by the recovery of the demand as well as the control of OPEX expenditures. The financial performance, next slide, we can see our total debt in the closing of the first quarter 2021 was $617 million, which is made up of 52% by international bonuses, 26% local bonuses, and 22% bank debt. The due terms we count on short term of 35 million, followed by our international module, April 2023, 3 million, and more than 3 years due term, 262 million, all due terms within the period of the concession. Regarding Ebitda, the debt first quarter 2021, it increased 3.9, mainly as a consequence of the impact of the pandemic in our Ebitda through the last year, particularly the second quarter 2020. Despite that, we acknowledge the juncture as temporary, so we reaffirm an objective growth of 3.5, and the coverage of interest in the Ebitda of debt remains stable, 6.7 in the closing of period. We foresaw a gradual recovery in the next quarters. Now let us move on with our forecast for the closing of the year. This slide, we would like to share our expectation for the next operational variables and financial variables in the closing of 2021 regarding the expansion of the main network, gas network. We want to build 1,700 kilometers, and we want to realize 230,000 new connections, reaching approximately 1.3 million customers. Consequently, we expect to close with an EBITDA of $185 million, as well as continue with the leverage of below 3.8 of EBITDA. Cálida, we confirm the commitment we have with our customers, the community, collaborators, investors. So we continue to work in the deployment of the investment plan, applying diligently all the biosafety protocols, taking measures to guarantee the availability of the business. With this, we appreciate your time, and we open for the Q&A session. Thank you, Mario, for the presentation. We have a couple of questions in the chat. The first one is from Camilo Roldán from Da Vivienda Corredores. He says, good morning. Thank you very much for the presentation. I have a question. Do you see any risk associated to the possible change of government that could affect the contracts of the company or any perspective of growth? Thank you very much for the question. First, I'd like to start with a general concept. Notwithstanding the presidential candidate that is elected the 6th of June in Peru, it is important to take into account that Cálida brings about a history of progress for the country that is important. We have invested almost $1,300 million. We bring direct employment for almost 10,000 people. We contribute with $35 million of taxes, and obviously we massify natural gas. We are bringing a positive connotation in the savings for all the sectors, not only industrial energy, but for the common people, and we contribute to the transition of the energy matrix to a friendlier service. That is the history we have, notwithstanding the government. The first thing we trying to do is to establish a communication bridge, and we can continue doing many things. That is a synonym of a continuity of progress, investment, employment, etc. Obviously, depending on the candidate. Clearly, some candidates are prone to businesses and respecting the government, and the candidates that have established differences from that to a radicalization in terms of the ideology they represent that could go against keeping this model. In that case, our starting point will be to establish dialogue and go back to our base, what we offer, what we bring. There is, if there is no opening to entrepreneurship or to give way to what the private sector has to say to the government, clearly that could have an impact in the investments for the future, since these have to keep economic balance. So it's a little difficult to answer exactly or precisely, because we will have to wait, we'll have to understand if we have a candidate that represents a left. Everything they say is what they are going to really do. But our starting point, nevertheless, would be the goal of Calida for Peru, the process we have made. Finally, we have reasons to have a positive conversation. We will have to wait a little bit to understand what will happen. Thank you, Mario. Very clear. We have other question from Felipe Torres from Vicecorp. Felipe says, which conversation you have kept with risk qualifiers, because their gross leverage is in the limit of fish as forecasted in the guidance 2021. Thank you for the question. The conversation is flawless. And something important is when you see the leverage to the closing of first quarter, this is a leverage built by the history of the last 12 months. It contains the Ebitda of the second quarter 2020 that historically has been the lowest one of Calida. And this is due to the fact that the lockdown established last year was in Peru very restrictive, and it didn't allow us to go in the streets and execute works and reduce the consumption of natural gas to historical minimums, close to the level of $33 million. And that impact, it's a statistical impact shown in the results that we are presenting. As long as we move forward, we are going to start gathering Ebitda levels, higher Ebitda levels, matching the dynamics of the business. As a consequence, we're going to see clearly a fall of the leverage. That history is understood, not only Fish, but also the other agencies, the other creditors. It's a transparent dialogue of what has happened and we hope to happen in the future. The first result of that we see in the recent qualification given by Fish that ratifies not only the amount of investment that we count on, but also the perspective. Thank you very much, Mario. So we don't have any more questions in the chat. So I believe we can close the presentations. So thank you very much, external participants, the leaders of TGI Calida who joined us today. I remind you the information of the results, the information you have seen in English and Spanish, the reports of results of financial states are in our page, subsection financial information in our website. We remind you from the area of relation of the investors, we are watching for any question you have regarding the results we have presented and any other topic of your interest. Finally, we remind you that tomorrow at 8 a.m. we will have the conference of results for Energía Bogotá at 8 in the morning. Thank you very much. A very good day.